Oh, goody.
Right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. In this one, I wanted to talk about tech cards and if they are overpowered or not in Marvel Snap. What is a tech card? If you don't know, tech cards are just cards that generally exist to shut down certain powerful strategies. Marvel Snap gives you the vast majority of the tech cards in the game pretty early on in the first two pools. A lot of the common ones that come to mind off of the top of my head are Cosmo, Armor, Enchantress, Shang-Chi, effects like that, where the goal is to not necessarily advance your own game plan, but prevent the opponent from advancing their game plan in some way. Now, we had a pretty interesting discussion about tech cards in our little one-off podcast thingy we did recently with Binks and some other cool folks. So if you want a more in-depth discussion on tech cards and a bunch of other interesting stuff about Marvel Snap, I will have the link in the description where you can check that out. It was a lot of fun, and I'm definitely looking forward to doing more stuff like that soon. But it kind of got me thinking about tech cards, and I've seen some other prominent players in the community. I know KM Best did a thing recently talking about tech cards and why he views they're a bit overtuned or overpowered, and it got me thinking about it as well, and I wanted to kind of talk about that and see what other people think about it. But what I think about tech cards generally is that they are pretty powerfully statted for the cost, for the most part. Now, I do think Enchantress and Shang-Chi are pretty much almost perfectly designed tech cards in that they have a very powerful effect. They're needed to stop some powerful strategies, but if your opponent isn't playing those strategies, they don't really feel that great in hand. Now, you're not quite as happy tempoing out a Shang-Chi or an Enchantress as you are, say, Killmonger or Armor or Cosmo. So I think that right there is kind of a good way to do the tech cards, but obviously you can't just have all your tech cards be 4-cost cards, or things would feel a little clunky. Now, for the most part, I think the vast majority of cards in Marvel Snap, or tech cards in specific, are actually pretty well balanced. A big part of this is the lane system and the fact that they are asynchronous. So generally, you are impacted negatively by these tech cards the same way your opponent is. Now, you get around that by building your deck in a way where it's not so impactful for you, so you don't really mind the negative effect. A great example of this is Cosmo, who really thrives in decks that don't really have on-reveal effects, or are just able to play the few on-reveals that they have in a different lane or before Cosmo comes down. Same can also be said with things like Armor. Now, generally, the only tech card that I think is a little bit stronger than I would like right now is Cosmo. And the main reason for this is I find there's a very limited number of ways to interact with this card, as unlike other ongoing effects, this card cannot be effectively Enchantressed since it shuts down the on-reveal ability. So I think Cosmo is really the only one I would consider a slight change to, but Cosmo is also very, very necessary to keep a bunch of different strategies in check. Personally, I would not mind seeing Cosmo lose a stat point to make it a bit more of a trade-off, as I think bumping up the mana cost effectively kills the card. So I don't want that, but I wouldn't mind seeing it reduced. I don't think that's going to happen, but I also think it might not be that bad if it doesn't happen, because the main reason for this is that I think tech cards in Marvel Snap are currently more powerful than they are going to be in the future. And the reason for that is a lot of decks right now, they all have a specific theme. Whether that's you're playing a Destroy Death deck, or you're playing a Move deck, or you're playing a Surfer deck. Every deck has kind of a theme, and then there's a set amount of cards that work within that theme. Now, Snap is a newer game, and it has a relatively smaller card pool, especially compared to other card games. And so right now, if you're building, let's say, a Destroy Death deck, if you just press Destroy in your collection, and you go through all the cards, you might notice there aren't really enough Destroy Synergy cards for you to fully theme your 12 card deck around it. You'll have some gaps. You'll have a card or two that they don't necessarily feed into the destroy theme, but you run them because they are good cards and they fill in the gaps because there just aren't enough cards for that theme yet to build a full deck with every card being synergistic. And this is why I think that tech cards are actually going to get worse with time in Marvel Snap. Because right now, a big reason why they're so good is because they're almost free value to include as long as you build your deck in a way where they aren't actively hindering you, while they do hinder your opponents at least some of the time, depending on what they're playing. So I think this is pretty interesting because right now, it doesn't feel like there's a big trade-off. It doesn't feel like, well, I have to go down one of these, very important destroy cards if I want to run this tech card in my deck, whether that's armor, whether that's Shang-Chi, Cosmo, whatever. It feels like there's not as much of a trade-off because there is a limitation in how much synergy is available due to the smaller card pool. And then this gets further enhanced by the fact that people do not have a full collection or even like a mostly complete collection because naturally people are looking for substitutions. And it's really easy to say, I don't know what I want to substitute this pool 3 or pool 4 or pool 5 card with. I'll just throw in a Shang-Chi or I'll just throw in an armor because sometimes it'll be good enough to win me the game versus other decks. And even when it isn't, it's usually just kind of fine. Usually at worst, kind of okay, and at best can potentially be backbreaking for the opponent. So the more I thought about this and after talking with others about it, it made me feel that, honestly, tech cards, even though they feel very powerful and prominent right now, I think they kind of need to be because as the game expands and as we get more cards that bring synergy and basically make it harder for you to find, that extra 1 or 2 deck slot spaces in your deck, I think the tech cards are going to get worse because you're going to feel that lack of synergy with your deck more often than when more cards are available and you're missing out on some of those powerful synergy effects than we currently do right now shortly after launch. So I thought this was kind of an interesting thing to talk about. I'm definitely curious what other people think about in the comments below. I know tech cards are definitely something that can bring about quite a bit of salt because it feels bad to have your whole strategy shut down by one card. But I do think that generally the locations help balance this out a bit, as it's pretty hard to, you can't just, Cosmo left lane and then also Cosmo the middle lane, unless you have some sort of duplication effect from a location or a moon girl or something. So I do think that helps with it a bit, but overall, as we see more powerful and synergistic cards introduced into the game, and as it becomes harder and harder to justify finding a slot in your deck for some of these powerful tech cards instead of a card that helps you win the game with your strategy, I think they're going to be worse than we're seeing them be now shortly after launch. But that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.